Hello, my name is Sterneker, and I have over 10 years of experience in elementary education. I work for Clovis Municipal Schools in Clovis, New Mexico. I'm a district literacy coach and responsible for overseeing and coaching 51 teachers within our district. Today, I'm here to defend my proposal for my research project, which looks at student achievement using OG and letters approaches. You might ask why I decided to research this specific question. How do OG and letters structure literacy approaches affect student achievement in phonics? The answer is quite simple. I'm a military spouse who's traveled the country and seen many different ways that schools and districts and states implement literacy into their realm of education. I was nervous to move to New Mexico when I noticed they were ranked 50th in the country. I inquired to Clovis Municipal Schools exactly what was being done to increase student achievement within the realm of literacy. I was glad to find out that they had adopted protocols for teachers to be trained in the OG and letters structured literacy approaches. In doing so, this led me to ask the question, well, how are you going to track student success? Nothing had been implemented yet. That's where I came in. How can I help assist my district and the state in looking at statistics to better improve our literacy instruction? Structured literacy is a new term that is hot in education right now. Structured literacy encompasses skills such as phonemic awareness, encoding, decoding, fluency, background knowledge, comprehension, and many more. These components are taught in a direct, explicit, and systematic way within the realm of the literacy block. Orton and Gillihan took that structured literacy approach and added a component through multisensory learning. Who exactly are Orton and Gillihan? Well, they are two scientists that studied how multisensory affects the brain in learning. So that brings me to the question, what is multisensory? Multisensory is when students use different type of learning strategies, whether it be through auditory, visual, or kinesthetic learning. That is the main difference between Orton and Gillihan and the letters approach. Letters, or language essentials for reading and spelling, was coined from Dr. Motes and Dr. Tolman, who are experts in the realm of literacy, especially structured literacy. The difference between the two is slight. They might use different ways to look at sound by sound when encoding, but regardless, they are both essentially using structured literacy. Orton and Gillihan just uses multisensory as well. So now we know how and the definitions behind what the teachers will be doing in the classroom. But how will we track the student data? My district uses two programs. We first use the QPS, or the Quick Phonics Screener. This diagnoses students where their achievement is in phonics. And it is a continuum. They start with a progression of one skill, and the skills progressively get harder. We also use a fast sprint diagnostic assessment. This is a scripted assessment that teachers will read to the students. The students will give their responses, and then a computer will generate out the students' results. In all these components, we will learn more about how structured literacy affects student achievement. Now let's look at the variables within my research. The first one is the literacy approach. How are we going to prevent teachers from having different trainings in the OG or letters approach? Well, one way we're going to prevent these variables is that we have been trained for OG in a program that was built by a company called IMSC. So our teachers are sent to these professionals. They have about 15 teachers hired on, and they will train our teachers in the OG approach. So what's that look like for letters? Letters has hired one person in our district to be a district facilitator. So that person has a scripted lesson of how they teach each skill through the letters platform. And being consistent with facilitators or trainers will keep the variables to a minimum of how each teacher was trained. That way it's not just subjective to each trainer's ideologies. Next, I want to look at the variables of student data. So in our QPS, or Quick Phonics Screener, that is a scripted document that teachers read to the students. The students will respond, and it has very specific guidelines for scoring. For example, on the QPS, the student will stop the test once they have met 80% or lower score. FastBridge, the variables this is the best one to not have variables because it is an online platform that generates your results for you. So you're just inputting the students' responses as you go through. For our professional development, this is a variable that is going to change because my team, along with our district curriculum specialists, come together and we look at those QPS scores and FastBridge data, and we generate and develop plans to push out district-wide to our teachers. So if we see that students are really struggling with fluency, we will research the best fluency strategies within the realm of our OG and letters guidelines, and then we will teach our teachers how to implement that into instruction. In doing so, we're creating specific professional developments that address our student needs based off of their data. Now, I would like to discuss how I will be collecting my data. For my quantitative data, I'm going to look at their FastBridge scores, specifically only the skills of letter and sound correspondence and nonsense word fluency. Each one of these components will be collected once in the fall, once in the winter, and once in the spring. For my QPS data, we will be looking at the phonics skills on a continuum. This assessment, or screener, starts with words, then builds to nonsense words, and then to sentences for each specific phonics skill. This data will be collected every 2 weeks and utilized as a progress monitoring assessment. For my observations, I will be using tally marks via a T-chart. This is where I will sit in the classroom during the phonics instruction, and I will make a tally under one side of my T-chart for OG and the other side of my T-chart for letters. And each tally represents one strategy being utilized for that type of approach. I will formulate this into a bar graph later on in my research for the results of which strategy or approach was utilized more. Next, I will use a survey via Google form, which I will track on a Likert scale how often teachers use OG and how often teachers use letters. This will be at the discretion of the teacher to determine how often they believe they use these approaches. I will also track which strategy they see more success with students by a basic multiple choice selection. For my qualitative data, I will also have questions within my Google Forms survey, which I will look at what connections teachers see using the OG and letters approaches in a classroom. I will also look at how they identify which strategy to implement. And then I will see if there's any correlation, similarities, or differences between teacher responses. I will also be conducting teacher interviews. to get feedback and information I can to make relevant to why we should or should not continue using these strategies, and if we feel that these strategies are beneficial to student achievement or proficiency in literacy. After I collect all my data, I will present my findings to my principals, and we will work together to come up with a plan to present to the district. So what exactly is my plan? Well, my plan is, and my district's plan is, that all teachers will be trained in OG and letters structured literacy approaches through either the IMSE program or the letters program. I will also be responsible for purchasing the materials needed to implement each strategy. Some materials that will be needed will be sand trays, dowel tins, sound chips, sound boxes, and decodable books. I will use the fund from each of my buildings to be able to buy these materials, and I will work with my principal to choose and select which materials are best for each classroom. In order to assist my teachers, I will go in and do classroom observations. I'll provide professional development and analyze student data to improve how the teacher implements these strategies and approaches, and also how to look at student deficiencies and provide appropriate interventions for their classroom. My procedure for this will be, first, I will need to conduct teacher interviews and observations. This will continue throughout the whole process of the research project. I will also send out a teacher survey and give a due date within the first 3 weeks that I start my project. The classroom teacher will administer the FastBridge assessment beginning within the first month of school. These are benchmarked to be given at the fall, winter, and spring semester. There are progress monitoring components that we will look at every 6 weeks. Then I will go around and I will administer the QPS or Quick Phonics Screener for the initial assessment. Teachers will be responsible for repeating progress monitoring every 6 weeks. So in order for me to put my plan and procedure into place, I must first look at my ethics and how to go about presenting my project. The first step to that is making sure I'm following the IRB guidelines. I must apply with appropriate documentation for a peer review. In that presentation, I will need to be able to explain why the teachers and students are necessary for this study, which is because we need teachers to teach our students, and we need the students to be able to take assessments so we can track how successful the teachers are in implementing instruction. Then I will need to be able to explain why this is needed for research. As I stated before, New Mexico is 50th in the country, and our literacy scores are down, not even just in New Mexico, but countrywide. So the need for this research is to see if structured literacy, this new hot take in teaching literacy, is beneficial to student achievement. We'll also need to provide what risk that my students and teachers have within this realm of the study. In my opinion, I do not see a risk. I only see benefits to this study because no one's being harmed. There are tests and assessments already required for our district, so there's nothing more being put on teachers' plates or on students' plates. Just as I have guidelines for the IRB, the state of New Mexico and my district have very strict guidelines on how to conduct such research. In order for me to conduct this, I have to get approval from our Deputy Superintendent of Academic Services and Leaderships. This must be done by October 1st. Then I need to prepare an outline for my research design, which I've stated in the slide prior. I need to be able to give valid and reliable research, which I will talk about here shortly. And I will have to share my results with my district. Some of the things my district are looking for is what will the research be and why? What offer do I offer withdrawal for participants at any time? How will students' privacy be protected? To answer these questions, my participants can withdraw at any time. I will also have to have a parental consent because I am dealing with students. And those parents can choose not to participate in the study. My students' privacy will be protected because I will not be using any names within the realm of my research. I will be using statistics only that deal with student data and growth via scatter plot, bar graphs, but no names will be attached to any of my data visuals. For the parental consent, we do have a district-made document that I have to provide for the parents to fill out for each of their students. For my biases, I need to make sure that my teachers are appropriately and consistently trained in both the OG and letters platforms. The OG training will be provided through the IMSE platform, and they are required to do 30 hours of training within 1 week or spread out within 1 month. For the letters training, it will be provided by our district letters facilitator. There's a total of 8 units, and you take part 1 of each unit monthly. This whole process takes 2 years to complete your training in letters. Another bias is how to get accurate and fair data. As I mentioned with QPS and FastBridge, they are very scripted, and either they have guidelines for scoring or they're computer-aided generated scoring. Therefore, that will help keep a bias out of student data. Now let's look into how this data will be reliable and valid. For reliability, QPS measures phonics skills on a continuum. As mentioned before, if students do not receive it 80% or proficient in one phonics skills, the teacher will discontinue the test at that time. And that will be where the student needs to hit interventions with. The reliability of the FastBridge is measuring the letter sounds and recognition, as well as nonsense word fluency. This is reliable because the teacher will read a scripted instructions, and then they will record answers via computer system. It is reliable because that computer system outputs and generates student achievement scores. The tally chart for observations will be reliable because I will sit in a whole phonics block and I will make a tally under which strategy is utilized throughout that phonics instruction. What makes it valid? I will be working to peer debrief and collaborate with my literacy and curriculum team. We will also collaborate with our OG and letters district representatives and provide feedback that is consistent with student data. I will make persistent and accurate observations. Therefore, I have selected that in my research, I will be the only one to be doing the observations via T-chart. And they state exactly what I'm observing, factual rather than objectivity, so that my information is objective rather than subjective. They will be dependent with accurate data. Because we are using the QPS and FastBridge system, there's little to no wiggle room with how to interpret such data. When presenting my data or interpreting the data, I will use appropriate visuals, such as bar graphs, to show which strategies are preferred. I can use scatter plots to show student progression and achievement. We will randomly select students. We are going to send parental consent to every K through third grade student, and it will only go off who is enrolled in each of my schools. We will provide progress monitoring through the QPS and FastBridge platforms as well, which will continue to be accurate data due to the scripted and guidelines for scoring or computer-generated scores. So what does this look like? What will happen? I will be sharing this plan with my district and state via Google Slides. In my slides, I provide many visuals such as graph, scatter plots, and many more to show student growth. I will also provide feedback received by teachers for our next steps for moving forward. In doing so, I predict we will see that all kindergarten through third grade students will increase proficiency to 70% or higher. Teachers will feel comfortable and positive about their teaching of the OG and letters approaches. They will continue to receive their professional development, and they will want to be there to learn more strategies of how to help their students be successful. For me, I will continue to make sure that I work with my team to create professional development opportunities for teachers to gain insight in structured literacy and how to implement the OG and letter structured literacy approaches within the realm of their classroom. I will continue to group students by what specific phonics skills they have and what specific phonics skills they need via their QPS and FastBridge scores. I will work with teachers to model strategies so that they feel successful and comfortable with each strategy. And then when the teachers are successful, I will continue to model student progress and help them improve their teaching further. Here is additional information to the references throughout my study. It has been a pleasure and an honor to sit here and share my passion for structured literacy through the OG and letters platforms. Please consider this for your review, and I hope to see positive trajectories in student achievement when using OG and letters structured literacy